Mr. Spock.
Mr. Spock.
Khan in Star Trek Into Darkness, I wish they had gone a little bit more into his background. That's one of the chief complaints I hear about Star Trek Into Darkness. Because if you're going into that one and you haven't seen Wrath of Khan or you haven't seen Space Seed, you only know like the broad strokes of who Khan is. You know that, oh, he was powerful in the past, but we don't know the specifics. They go into depth in Space Seed, and he explains the kind of person he was in Wrath of Khan. And we don't get very much of that in Star Trek Into Darkness. And I think that shortchanges the new audiences a little bit.
It really does. In fact, I think you don't actually find out how bad a guy Khan was until he gets told that, or sorry, Spock gets told that by future Spock, where you see him start the conversation, and then later on in the movie, he mentions to Khan, "Oh, I understand that your mission involves, the genocide of anyone who you feel is not superior." Well, like, that's the audience is hearing of it if they never saw.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, oh, I guess Khan is this evil overlord, right? All you know about him is what he told Kirk before, which obviously he omitted that bit.
Yeah, well, see that there's the thing about that though. In the original Space Seed, after they first meet Khan, one of the first things Spock does is he looks in their little history data bank or something. Oh, that's who he was.
Like, he's a famous guy.
Yeah, he's a famous guy.
I think he could have been like future Google Khan.
Or like read about it in flight school or whatever school they go to.
No! You'll flood the whole compartment. He'll die.
He's dead already.
It's too late.
Okay, one element in Into Darkness which I think is lost from Wrath of Khan, and I don't know if you felt this, David, because you don't know the characters as well, but when you see Wrath of Khan, it really is like a sad moment. I mean, Spock is this iconic character, Kirk is this iconic character, and Spock dying before his eyes, and this is the crux, and you've told me this as a praise of Wrath of Khan before, is Kirk is like this awesome guy. He always comes out on top. They had that scene earlier in Wrath of Khan where it seems like they're stranded on a planet. It seems like Kirk is desolated. He yells the famous word. David, could you demonstrate for us?
God. And I was like, oh, that's where that's from.
Yes, he yells that, and then it turns out it was all a ploy. He was talking in code with Spock during that part. Oh, if we don't hear from us in 2 hours, don't bother to pick us up. We're dead. And it seems like, oh, we haven't been able to contact them in 2 hours. We're dead here. We're going to be stuck here, even though there's food, but we're basically stranded. And then out of nowhere, well, they have the test at the beginning, the no-win scenario, and it's mentioned that Kirk never, well, he did fail the test a couple times, but then ultimately he cheats on the test so that he can win.
I don't like to lose.
I don't like to lose.
What was that test that they were even talking about?
It was the one at the very beginning of the movie. It's the one that Vulcan girl was doing.
Yeah, what test was that?
It's called the Kobayashi Maru test. It's the whole thing is someone is put in command of a starship, right?
Yeah.
And they're trainees or whatever. They take this test, and they have to rescue a ship called the Kobayashi Maru. But then if they go to save them, the Klingons show up out of nowhere and they destroy their ship. It's a no-win scenario. There's no way they can win. And the whole point of the test is to see how the person reacts to that. Do they panic, or do they what steps do they take to solve the problem?
Are those drills that they were doing at the beginning of the movie?
Yeah. And when Kirk was a cadet, and they actually show this in the 2009 film, when Kirk was a cadet, he had taken the test 2 or 3 times. he had failed it, but then he took it one more time, and he had reprogrammed the test so that he could rescue the ship and escape. And he did that. He's the only person to have ever done this, and he got an commendation for being original. And that's his whole mantra is, I don't like to lose. I don't believe in the no-win scenario. But then you get to the scene with Spock. Spock's behind the glass, and the whole idea behind that scene is that Kirk can't do anything. The whole thing, even if earlier they're all stranded at the middle of a dead planet, still Kirk wins the day. He's able to defeat the plans of Khan. But then there's Spock behind the glass. There's nothing he can do. And then Spock dying is almost like Kirk dying.
No.
But then at the end, he's redeemed. He forms a relationship with his son, and he finds that he can learn. He can still learn. The glory days aren't necessarily over. That's how he overcomes his feelings of, hey, I'm old. I can't do anything now. But he defeated Khan, and he's regained a relationship with his son. So there's something he can learn now, and he can move on. That's hence the words at the end. I feel young. I feel young again. You know, and I like that. I like that depth, and I think the emphasis on action in the newer films does lose some of that, but I think it's still there. I don't know if you guys think that, but
well, it's talking about both the emphasis on action and the scene where Spock saves the ship versus Kirk saving the ship. I think there's a big difference in those scenes that makes me prefer the original, because in the original, it's just this thing behind this plate of glass, and all you do is you take the top off, pull something out, whatever, put the thing back on. Anybody could do this.
yes,
Right. The only thing stopping someone from doing this is that it will kill them. Right. And you see when Spock learns information that this has to be done. Well, implicitly, I guess the audience doesn't know, but Spock knows. You just see him like instantly understand and get up and walk out to go to engineering where he needs to go to do it. Kirk doesn't even notice that he leaves.
Yeah.
He just has this like implicit, nobody else is willing to go in there, but Spock just hears about it. He knows that's what he has to do, right? So that's sort of the power of the scene. It's like anybody could have gone in and done it, but Spock decides in that moment, right? Whereas the Kirk one, you see him sort of hesitates beforehand, and he's got to think about it, and then it's like this big physical challenge where he's got to do like monkey bars and like kick the thing 100 times. It's like, maybe Kirk is the only person on the ship who could have done this with his like plot powers and ability to kick things really hard. And so I think it kind of loses. It makes it into a big action scene where, is he gonna get there in time? Whereas, there's no action payoff with the Spock scene. But it loses that character of, Spock is the only one who could have done that, not because it was a physical challenge, but because, he's morally, Spock is the only person who would have done it.
So it's, once again, it comes down to their characters. Well, Spock's character, rather. And then with Kirk, it's just, he's the one who goes in there.
Plus, can he take the radiation more? Because he's a race, and he's like,
because he's a Vulcan.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, it's possible.
That would kind of undermine that point. But anyway, they don't mention that in the movie. So.
There we go.
Bones, what are you doing with that tribble? The tribble's dead. I'm injecting Khan's platelets into the deceased tissue of the necrotic host.
That thing with Khan's blood or whatever, is that like, does that happen in all the movies, or is that just like an Into Darkness thing?
No, that was an Into Darkness thing. They introduced it in that film. It doesn't contradict anything from before, but it's
It kind of implies that Khan always had that power all along, because the only difference is the different timeline, right? So
yeah.
so we never knew.
So he has like Wolverine powers.
He has Wolverine powers.
He's Wolverine, and
Yeah.
now there's a race of what is it? Super Tribbles
Yes.
that also have Wolverine powers. They're gonna destroy the galaxy. That's the next movie.
Yes, I want to see this movie, Matt.
The Tribbles.
Dr. McCoy accidentally injected a Tribble with invincible blood, and he's going to multiply into all these invincible Tribbles and take over the galaxy.
They can't be killed by radiation.
I want to see this. Well, there are other plot elements in Star Trek Into Darkness which I think work well, and we kind of talked about them. Really, the main villain of Star Trek Into Darkness, at least initially, isn't Khan. It's Admiral Marcus.
Oh yeah.
And
I see that.
he has this whole plot about starting war with the Klingons, as you mentioned. And I don't know, there's this whole idea behind Starfleet. Is it a military organization or is it an exploratory organization? And I think that's a little bit of poking fun at the current films, because that was one of the major complaints about the new films is, wow, it's so associated with action. It's about shooting people. The older films weren't about that. They were about exploration, and then things go bad, but it's about learning a moral lesson. And then near the beginning of the film, and I gotta give credit to the writers, you've got Scotty there. He's refusing to accept the new torpedoes onto the Enterprise. And he says, I thought we're supposed to be explorers. He says that. And I think that was a little bit of like, telling the fans, yes, we know this isn't exactly the same as the old stuff, but we're giving you this plot anyway. But it does bring up some questions, like, Admiral Marcus, is what he's doing, is it really right? I mean, because he's trying to start a war with the Klingons, but because he thinks it's inevitable, but by doing this, it's on his terms, and then he has a better chance of winning. But at the same time, you're starting a war with another race. That's terrible. So I don't know. There's little things like that. I like that aspect of Star Trek Into Darkness, but
it's interesting. They kind of don't give you any info on the Klingons.
That's true.
You hardly ever see them, and I don't think you see them at all in the previous movie.
No, you don't. They mention them, but
and so it's kind of like, well, maybe if we had more background on what the Klingons were like and what the risk really was, maybe that would be more of an open question. Maybe that Admiral Marcus, right? As it is, it just seems like he's a crazy person.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not really a lot of evidence in his favor about the Klingons.
I don't even think the Klingons had guns. They had like swords or something.
Yeah, they're big on those weird batleths.
Batleths, yeah. Yeah, in the old universe, so yeah, as fans may know, the Abram movies take place in an alternate universe that was caused during the 2009 film. In the original universe, Star Trek VI, which is a Star Trek movie I really like, by the way, it deals with the whole thing about the Federation versus the Klingons, and that whole movie is about that. And it almost seems like Star Trek Into Darkness is trying to drop some subtle hints that maybe this is what the next movie will be about. I don't know myself, but
I hope there's more Klingons.
You killed a Klingon patrol. Even if you got away without a trace, war is coming. And who's gonna lead us? You? If I'm not in charge, our entire way of life is decimated.
So this kind of ties into what I was saying about Khan, where you can be more invested in who Khan is and Into Darkness if you knew a little bit more about who he was. And we don't get very much of that. And likewise with the Klingons, you don't get very much of that. I think, ironically, even though Star Trek fans seem to not like Star Trek Into Darkness for some reason, they think it's worse than Generations. Even though there's that, I think it was made more for Star Trek fans because they're the ones who would get something out of that. It's like, oh, it's Khan. I know what his motivations are. It's the Klingons. I know what they're all about.
Right.
Therefore, I can be invested in this plot. But it seems to have backfired because
It's almost hard to tell how good the movie is to someone who knows nothing about Star Trek. Because it really banks on, the relationship between Spock and Kirk, the Klingons, and Khan.
And the relationship between Kirk and Spock, throughout the movie, it doesn't really seem like they're best friends. It seems like they're associates. They respect each other. We don't get very much of the friendship that's present in Wrath of Khan.
Right.
So I think that's lost too. That being said, and I think both of you guys liked Star Trek Into Darkness anyway.
Yeah.
That being said, I think the way it had more plot than the 2009 film. I think. I mean, the previous film, you got a new villain. His name was Nero. He was a Romulan, and his motivations are completely out of whack. And the whole thing just amounts to, I want to destroy the Earth. That's it. It's like that's his whole story. Whereas in the new one, there's a little bit more. There's a lot more actually. You believe that there's one plot, and then there's a plot twist. It's not really about that. And then there's characters who you don't know who they were before. All those things kind of amount to it being, in my opinion, one of the better Star Trek movies. I don't know, David. Of course, you haven't seen very many of them, but you liked it. I mean, you liked the film even without prior knowledge.
Yeah.
And Matt, you have seen a few of the other movies.
I don't think I have seen enough to make that kind of judgment.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I like it better than Nemesis, I guess. If that's a way of rating.
That's not saying very much.
I did not.
What is that? The first one? Or is that the?
That was the 10th one. That was the one before.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Into Darkness.
I did not like the 2009, the reboot.
Okay.
One. So if that's any way to gauge my reaction to this, I wasn't going into this movie expecting to like it. So it was sort of a pleasant surprise. That movie was nonsense. It's no good. It was Nemesis again.
Yeah.
Everything you loved about Star Trek Nemesis.
From hell's heart, I stab at thee. For hate's sake, I spit my last breath at thee.
I feel like we haven't talked about Wrath of Khan as much as Into Darkness.
That's true.
I don't know, maybe it just goes without saying that Wrath of Khan is a good movie. I mean, there seems to be
it's harder to pick apart like all the bad stuff. I mean, it was good.
It's kind of a consensus, I think, that it's very good.
Yeah.
It's almost hard to review a movie that you really like. You're just like, oh, well, remember that scene?
Yeah.
That was a good scene. Like that Chris Farley character in Sandman. Remember that one time when Kirk did yada yada? Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, there are a couple things about Wrath of Khan we haven't talked about, like the literary references.
Right. So Chekhov is checking out the Botany Bay.
Mm-hmm.
He notices that there's a shelf full of books, like just classic English literature, Moby Dick, Paradise Lost, just a bunch of
Kill Two Cities, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, and Khan has apparently become obsessed with these books because he's just constantly not only making reference to them by what he says, but also living them out tragically.
Yeah, he's Captain Ahab. Yeah.
Right.
And that guy who keeps objecting to him, David, I remember you said, "Oh, that guy's
yeah.
cool." The one who always objects to his orders. He's like the Starbuck, and he's just like, "No, sir, you shouldn't do this." And he's like, "No, I'm obsessed. Kirk or the Enterprise is the white whale. I have to destroy it." Yeah. And also the quotes at the end, "From hell's heart, I stab at thee." Yeah.
Oh, is that from a book? That's what that
Is that from a book?
I believe so.
Okay.
But I
It seems like it would be. And I'll follow him from Antari's Maelstrom, around
Right, so
Perdition's
he
Flame, and
he takes Moby Dick, lines from Moby Dick, and he sort of Star Trek-izes them by making them relevant to where places he could be chasing Kirk around the galaxy. So, it's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Get the illusions there.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you run the risk when you do that of sounding pretentious, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's a damn good movie. So
Yeah.
I mean, if you got it flaunted, I guess.
Well, see, that's one thing about movies in general. I think if the movie's bad, but it has all these literary allusions and stuff, that doesn't automatically make the movie good. You know, it's like, um, whereas Wrath of Khan is a good movie, and you look deeper, it makes you appreciate the good stuff more. Whereas, it's like if it's a bad movie, it's like, well, it's in general bad. Why would I even bother to look deeper?
Well, you have to define like the good parts of it. Like, why did I watch this? Oh, I guess it was alright. Has a few good things in it.
Aside from the direct literary references, there's all kinds of things like Genesis, and Spock even mentions it's a biblical reference, and then he's Kirk is like eating an apple when they're in the Genesis thing, like he's sort of eating the fruit of knowledge over like Adam and Eve. So it's just a lot of fun little literary things.
Yeah, that's good.
I'll chase him round the moons of Nibia and round the Antares maelstrom and round perdition's flames before I give him up.
Khan was like, there's this ancient like Klingon saying or something.
Like,
revenge is a dish served cold. Like, isn't that from something else?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not a Klingon.
Well, I don't know if you guys remember Kill Bill Volume 1. At the very beginning, Quentin Tarantino has this quote. It says, "Revenge is a dish best served cold." And then underneath it, he attributes it to Klingon proverb.
Excellent.
Even though J.J. Abrams is not a Star Trek fan, the writers of Star Trek Into Darkness and the previous film, they are huge Star Trek fans. So,
well, that's good.
So maybe it's just like, technobabble, I mean, evidently they can't write as well. I mean, obviously they can't write as well as the guys who wrote Wrath of Khan, but they're able to make an engaging story, and I think that's a big thing with the movies now. And I don't think, a lot of people say that Star Trek Into Darkness is a film where you have to turn off your brain. It's kind of like The Avengers, where there isn't too much there. I mean, we all saw The Avengers, but it's mostly a turn off your brain film. I don't want to say Star Trek Into Darkness is that. I mean, I don't know if do you guys agree or disagree?
It definitely has a bunch of scenes like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, this is not a scene that would be in Star Trek as I used to understand it before the J.J. Abrams movies came out,
Yeah.
They're like, shooting through space at 1,000,000 miles per hour, dodging the debris and stuff. It's like, but there are a lot of scenes like that. They're only there to like look at the cool special effects and watch the action happening. It doesn't deal with it doesn't touch the plot or the characters. It's just there.
Those scenes, it kind of remind me of like Star Wars or something, where they're like dodging stuff. I don't know. I feel like I've seen that in some Star Wars movies.
Oh yeah. Well, we were just talking about it. The scene on the planet, that ship going through the crevices, and it was just that's totally Star Wars. Yeah. That's true. That would be.
I mean, not to bring down Star Wars. I mean, I don't think Star Wars is all cheap action scenes.
Yeah,
I love Star Wars. Well,
yeah.
Well,
we'll get into that at some point. But yeah, at least in regards to Star Trek Into Darkness, I found the action scenes engaging. I was already invested in the characters from previous stuff. It's not as intellectual or well thought out. The characters aren't as at the forefront as they were with Wrath of Khan, but Wrath of Khan is very, very good.
Right.
So that fact, it's like, well, you're comparing it to something already.
You should watch Wrath of Khan even if you hate Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, if the threshold is not, is this like a good movie on the order of maybe you should watch this before you die if you're into movies. But if it's like rank the Star Trek movies. Right, Into Darkness is not at the bottom of that list. Right, there are several terrible Star Trek movies.
Yeah, Trekkies.
Probably some of the people that would probably like that movie.
Yeah.
Terrible movies.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the criticisms, but I think it's a lot of hyperbole. It's like, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. J.J. Abrams ruined Star Trek. He didn't ruin Star Trek. Star Trek Nemesis ruined Star Trek. Enterprise ruined Star Trek, unfortunately.
I think there's a lot of backlash against dumb action
Yeah,
because of Transformers, basically,
yeah.
and movies that try to be Transformers. But I think, you know, filmmakers have shown that you can have even a dumb action movie that's better than Transformers. Like, I think Pacific Rim is an example of, if you put a good director behind Transformers, even those movies could have been good. Just look at Pacific Rim. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's more people are letting sort of a theoretical understanding of why a movie should be bad get a little ahead of attempting to enjoy it. And like I said, I didn't go into it thinking I was going to like it.
Yeah, and then...
But you got to give it a chance.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, so, David, any final thoughts on either of these films? Let's start with Wrath of Khan. David, final thoughts on Wrath of Khan. Would you recommend it? There are things you like that, you know...
Yeah, I think I recommend you should probably see Wrath of Khan before you see Into Darkness. You may be able to follow the movie a little bit more if you know like the background, you know a little bit more about Khan. I kind of like the Wrath of Khan, that Khan better than
Yeah.
the other Khan, just because I don't know why. He looks funnier or something.
He has that great accent.
Yes.
So they didn't try to duplicate, which I guess is good.
Yeah.
It probably would have turned out bad.
No ship should go down without her captain.
Matt, final thoughts on Wrath of Khan.
Wrath of Khan, watch it.
Thank you.
To the point. That's good.
Yeah, that's good. I agree with both these guys. Wrath of Khan is a very good movie. I will disagree with you a little bit. I think it is one of those films that, like, if you're into sci-fi, I think it is one of those films that you should watch. Even if you're not a Star Trek fan, watch that movie. And if you're a fan of Kevin Smith says so. No, but Wrath of Khan is a good movie. There's a lot of thought into it. If you like a thinking man's sci-fi film, that's the film for you. If you think that a lot of scenes that are based on strategy, more character-based, and not very kinetic like the new films are, if you don't like movies like that, well, give it a chance anyway.
You ready?
Are you?
Matt, final thoughts on Star Trek Into Darkness.
Watch it or don't. But it's not bad. It's a good movie.
Great. Thank you. David, final thoughts on Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yeah, kind of similar to Matt. You know, you can watch it. If you don't watch it, it's all right. You know, I guess I could differentiate the two movies basically. Like Wrath of Khan, it's more easygoing. If you kind of just want to watch a movie like at night, kind of chillax, fall asleep, watching a movie, watch Wrath of Khan. If you want to be actively watching something, bunch of action scenes, watch Star Trek Into Dark. You want to entertain a few little kids, Star Trek Into Darkness. You know? I don't know. But they're both good.
Yeah.
You want to frighten little children.
Yeah.
You show them the evil mind control earwig scene from Wrath of Khan.
It's a good Halloween movie, man.
Yeah, that's a good Halloween scene in general. But I think Star Trek Into Darkness is a very good movie, so I would recommend it personally. As I said, if you're a hardcore Trek fan, you may or may not like it. So those were our thoughts on Star Trek, Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek Into Darkness. They are very similar in some of the ways that were they were very similar in some of the ways that they were executed in terms of scenes and events. but they're at very completely different spectrums. They're aimed at different people. Star Trek Into Darkness has been rated by Trek fans as the worst Star Trek movie ever made in Wrath of Khan.
Where does rating come from?
I think it was a Trek convention or something, and all the Trekkies voted on what the worst one was, and then they all jumped for joy when it was Into Darkness or something. I think it was a Trek convention. But I heard it on the news or something. But.
Where do they have those conventions at? I never heard of these.
They have one in Vegas or something, but yeah, that
That'd
aside,
be fun. Go to Star Trek convention in Vegas. That's a whole different thing.
yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But that's our thoughts on Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan and Star Trek Into Darkness. So please comment below on your thoughts on our review, whether you agree or disagree. We're not trying to force our opinions on you, but
I'm trying to force my opinion on you.
Matt is, but yeah, those are our thoughts. Thank you very much, and watch some of our videos, please. We're desperate.
Or don't, whatever you want. Subscribe, though.
Subscribe, whether you like us or not.
Space, the final frontier. These are the continuing voyages of the starship Enterprise. Her ongoing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life forms and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone.